Okay. Perik Yud Tes, Pasuk Yud Aleph, page 658 in Kedoshim. Okay. So I tell you, all this technology, when I was a kid, the big thing that we were looking for, first of all, I remember when phones came out that weren't attached to the wall. That was a big thing, a phone that you could walk around with. Most women had a thing with a wire, so at least you knew where your wife was at all times. She was in the kitchen with the phone, cooking, and she had her thing. My mother used to keep the phone like this, and my grandmother had like a thing that kept the phone up so you could talk. It latched onto the shoulder. So you thought. Then the portable phones came out. That was like a big thing. Then car phones came out. Like, whoa, that's really something. And the dream was, and I remember, I think they had at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, a telephone where you could see the person on the other end. That was the whoa, when are we ever going to get to that? That sort of thing. That's where things were holding. Nowadays, you can have a watch with what do you call a smartwatch? And now they can put chips in your head that do the thinking for you, which is probably an improvement for many people. But, okay.
Wisdom to the wise.
Huh?
And chips to rich people.
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, a telephone call in the old days, a call from America to Israel was $3 a minute. A dollar was a lot of money in those days. I mean, you made a phone call that you were on the phone. If you were on the phone for 2 minutes, that was a long time. My mother would call. My father would be in the background. Come on, this is costing a lot of money. He'd get on the phone and say, "Hi, how you doing? Great." That's great. Good talking to you. Click. That was it. That was a lot of money. All right, 658. Pasuk Yud Aleph. 3 lines on the bottom. Lo tignovu, don't steal. V'lo sechachashu, literally means don't deny. Rashi says, what do you call it? If you steal, in the end you're going to deny it, and then you're going to, there's a connection between the two. You're going to steal, you're going to deny. V'lo sechakra, don't lie. Ish ba'amisa, a man against his fellow. So here, there are quite a few points that we want to get to. Number one, you'll notice that it says it in the plural. It says, lo tignovu. In the Aseret HaDibros, which we mentioned yesterday, when it says lo signov, and I told you yesterday in the Aseret HaDibros, the mistake people make, that is a capital offense. In the Aseret HaDibros, stealing is not a capital offense. Kidnapping is a capital offense. And in the Aseret HaDibros, it's in the singular, lo signov. Here, in stealing, it's in the plural, lo signovu. Why? Anybody got a guess? Why there is it singular and here it's plural? Good, excellent, exactly what one of Fortune says. How many people are going to kidnap? You got to get a real no good dick who's going to kidnap. That's a very fair thing. Lo signov, I can kidnap you. Kidnap. And in order to transgress, you got to pull him out of his property, and you got to force him to do labor. It's so. What about stealing? Ooh, stealing. That's already a little bit more common. And not only it's common, I saw one of the Fortune says. Look at the end of the pasuk. It says, Ish ba'amiso, a man against his fellow man. And amiso really means, even more than chavero, you're a friend. That meaning that sometimes people, well, he's a friend of mine, so he won't mind if I take, the two of us are partners in business. So he won't mind if I take certain liberties. Therefore, you're more vulnerable because it's your friend. So it says, you can't do that. That's stealing by any other name. That's called stealing. That's called stealing. You can't take those liberties. And it's unfortunate. The Gemara says that Rubam begezel. The Gemara says most people are guilty of gezel. The difference technically in the Gemara between gazlan and a ganav. What's the difference between a gazlan and a ganav? A ganav pays double. A ganav who steals pays double. A gazlan does not pay double.
Pays 20%?
No, he pays back whatever he stole. What if he doesn't have the item? So he has to pay the value of the item. The ganav has to pay double. What's the difference? A gazlan is what we would call a robber. No, even worse. He steals openly. An armed robber. Right? What's that?
competition still open.
Yeah, he's certainly an armed robber. But they say, how do you know a politician's lying? He moved his lips. So a Goslin is not, a Goslin will walk up to you and they confront you openly. A Ganav is what we would call a burglar. He sneaks it. A shoplifter is a Ganav, doesn't want anybody to see him. A Goslin doesn't care who sees him. So in an interesting, in the secular world, who's worse, an armed robber or a burglar? Who gets a bigger punishment?
One who still open.
An armed robber. Ooh, yeah, nice, an armed robber. In Torah, it's exactly the opposite. Why? Because the Goslin, at least he doesn't insult God. He says, I'm not afraid of God, but I'm not afraid of you either. The Ganav says, I'm not afraid of God, because otherwise he wouldn't be stealing, but I am afraid of people. So he's insulting God by showing that there are others that he's more afraid of, and therefore the Ganav has to pay double according to halacha. So the Torah says, the Gemara says, Ruban begezel. Most people are guilty of theft at some point or other. Maybe you walked into a supermarket and you picked up an item and your finger went in and you might have dented it a little bit, so you quickly put it back on the shelf, like a bag of wafers. Or you accidentally knocked a jar of peanut butter off the shelf and it cracked, and you said, well, it wasn't my fault, it shouldn't have been on the shelf. Or pressing the fruit, any of these things. You could check it, but if you damage it, it's one thing to check it, it's another thing to damage it. If you damage it, you got to pay. You can't just put it back quickly. If you take advantage of a bus, you get on the bus and your bus card's not working. You're stealing from the company. But what to do is a problem. Exactly how to pay back. You can't just pay back any worker for the transportation. They'll just put it in their pocket. Exactly how to pay back when you stole is a problem. But these are all, that's why the Gemara says most people are guilty. I'm not a thief. Did you ever rob a bank? None of us rob banks. Yeah, but we've all stolen at some point or other. More than that. On Yom Kippur, we say Hashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu. Gazalnu? I stole? I'm a Goslin? When did I guzzle this year? I've been so good. I guzzle? What did I steal? So I saw one of our says, well, did anybody ever greet you and you didn't return his greeting? The Gemara says if somebody greets you, first of all, Gemara says if somebody who you normally greets you, you should greet him first. And if you didn't, and he greeted you and you didn't return his greeting, you're a Goslin. That's what the Gemara says in Bracha Sandavav Amud Beis. You've stolen what's rightfully his. You've stolen it. He's entitled to it. You've stolen it from him. You're a Goslin. That's what the Gemara says. Such a person is a Goslin. So there are a lot of categories over here. So the Torah says, Lo tignovu shakru ish ba'miso. Now, earlier, it says velosa. Here it says velosa shakru. Now I'll take this. Let's get a little technical, but I want you to see this. It says velosa shakru ish ba'miso. So don't lie against your fellow man. Now take a look at Rashi here. It's the left column of Rashi, about 6 lines from the bottom. Left column of Rashi, 6 lines from the bottom. Velosa shakru. Now why does the Torah say this? There's a very important concept here. Lefisha Nemar, because the Torah says, V'nishba al sheker, that when a guy swears falsely, and then he admits that he swore falsely, Yishalem keren v'chomesh. He has to pay the principal, and then 20%. There's your 20%. That's for a guy who swore falsely. You made a claim against me that I owe you money. I swore falsely. I swore. I didn't just deny it. I swore falsely. Then I admitted that I swore falsly. So I have to pay you back the money, plus another 20%. Lamadnu onesh. So there we learn the punishment. Azhora minay, but where's the warning? Now this is the concept I wanted to get to. There's a concept in Torah that you don't get a punishment unless there's a pasuk that gives a warning first. There has to be a warning. Where is the warning specifically in this situation? Right here, Losa Shakru. That you not lie against your fellow man. That's the warning, Rashi says, based on Chazal. Who does he quote? The Torah's Kohanim. Torah's Kohanim is what we call the Medrash on Vayikra. That how do you know that? Where's the warning? The punishment, we're told, if you deny something and you swear falsely, the punishment is you got to pay back the principal with another 20%. Where, Chumash, 20%. Where is the, what do you call it? Where's the warning that the Torah says don't do such a thing? And there has to be a warning. That's a rule in the Gemara. It has to be a warning in order to get the punishment. This pasuk is the warning. V'lo shakru.
When they ask you to confirm, that's the warning in itself.
The what?
When they ask you to confirm whether you still something like
No. The warning in the Torah that you're going to get, the warning in the Torah that you mustn't do it, not the warning that Beza gives you. Where is there a warning in the Torah that you mustn't do it? Right over here. No. One second. You're confusing something. Right over here, the Torah says lo tignova. Why does the Torah say, lo shakru? V'lo shakru. Why does it, what's this v'lo shakru telling us? Remember, earlier in the Torah said, midvar sheker tirchak. In Shmos it says, distance yourself from falsehood. So what are you telling me over here? This is specifically warning you not to deny something and swear falsely. Later we're told, and if you do such a thing, you got to pay the principal in the 1/5. But how do you know that? Where's the warning not to do that? This is the warning right over here. Earlier, it says, midvar sheker tirchak. Now, it's the only place in the Torah it says, distance yourself from it. It doesn't say midvar chazer tirchak. It doesn't say distance yourself from pork. And it doesn't say midvar shatnez tirchak, distance yourself from shatnez. Here, by falsehood, earlier in Shmos, it says, midvar sheker tirchak, distance yourself from falsehood. Why? The answer is because lying or exaggerating, it's so common that people throw in inaccurate information. And even if it's harmless, but you've already kind of push the envelope a little bit, and who knows where that's going to lead to. And eventually, that's why there are certain professions, especially politics, lawyers, where people are lying all the time. They don't even see it as like that's just something you do.
How can you be a lawyer and not lie?
It is possible. There are good, firm lawyers who don't lie. You just have to be honest and straightforward. Don't lie. But because of the nature of the job and a politician, and you justify it. There's certainly justification. So I told you I was once in a cab here. I heard an interview. There was a guy who was a lawyer who was the middleman between two organizations. There was a group of politicians, and there was some sort of union. There was some sort of deal going down between them, and it was filthy. So I heard this in the cab. They had this lawyer on a live interview in the cab in Israel, and the guy says to him, because everybody knew it was a filthy business. I don't remember what it was. It was really, really, really murky. And so they said to this lawyer, the guy in the interview says, Mr. Ploney, did you ever have to lie? This is all in Hebrew. He says back to him, let's put it this way. There were some days where I told the truth. That's what he said. So the Torah says, midvar sheker tirchak, distance yourself from falsehood, because if you don't, somebody asked, is it permissible to exaggerate? So I want to tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I was walking, and these two guys started up with me. Oh, kind of big guys. But I resorted to martial arts, and I put them both in the hospital. I mean, I'm exaggerating. It wasn't a couple of years ago. It was last week. And it wasn't two guys. It was a little old lady. And I didn't put them in the hospital, put her in the hospital. She hit me over the head with her purse. And I didn't use martial arts. I ran like the blazes. But I was only exaggerating. That's a lie. That form of exaggeration is a lie. That's falsehood. That's falsehood. Exaggeration, which is permissible, is what we would call figure of speech exaggeration. That's permissible. I told you 1,000,000 times, don't exaggerate. That's permissible exaggeration. And we find that even in the Gemara, where the Gemara uses the number 300. Korach had 300 donkeys carrying the keys to his treasure house. That's what the Gemara wants to give us an idea of how rich Korach was. So the Gemara itself resorts to what we call figure of speech exaggeration. That's permissible. but to exaggerate and they add in what they call it embellishing the story. What they call embellish, we call a lie. So here, the Torah is talking about, that's midvar sheker tirchak, is a concept. Stay away from, try to distance yourself from falsehood, but there's no command over there. It's not a transgression, it's not a command. Here the Torah says, v'lo seshakru, it's in command form, it has to do with the mitzvah. Okay, good, clear. Okay, let's go on. Oh, by the way, I get there 1 second. The reason I thought, well, this is very important. The reason the Gemara says in the plural is also because there's something called genevas das. Genevas das means creating a deception, creating a wrong impression or deception. So, for example, and this is something that the reason it says it in the plural is because even if I'm not a person who will really steal money, but there are plenty of people that I'll try to, maybe deceive them a little bit. One example would be, there's a car salesman. There's a shop, they sell cars, sports cars. I'm a 19-year-old teenager. I don't have any money, but I really would like to see what that Trans Am feels like. So I borrow a nice piece of gold, some bling, and put on a nice, expensive, I borrow a leather jacket, and I dress myself to the T, and I come marching in, and I say to the guy, mind if I take that Trans Am for a spin? And the guy looks at me, and his eyes, whoa, we got one over here. And then you take the Trans Am for a spin, and you give it back, and say, thanks, good car. Right? That's you creating a deception. I had a student, I said, he was a wild kid, Baruch Hashem. Today he's married, has a family, he's a Rebbe in Yeshiva. And when he was a teenager, so he had a motorcycle. He was real proud of his motorcycle. Then he wanted to buy a car. So he goes into the shop. He was 17 years old. Somehow he had cash. He told me he went into the shop, and the guy was showing him a car that he wasn't really interested in. I think it was a Duster. Not sure it was. I think it was. He wasn't really interested in the car. The guy said, look, this thing could really move. He said, I'll tell you what, take it out for a spin. Go as fast as you want, and if you get a ticket, I'll pay it. That's what the salesman said to him. And he ended up buying the car. That's how you tempt a 17-year-old. But if you create a false impression, that's called genevas das. That's genevas das. What are the things that they do? For example, I'll tell you what might be boring. It's on sale for $14.99. $14.99. There is no 99 in Israel. There are no 1 agorot pieces. So how can you sell it for $14.99? That's creating a false impression. I think they passed the law that you can't do that. It's got to be $14.90 because that's theoretically possible to pay, not $14.99. That would be called genevas das. That would be called. That's called. What were we going to ask, Azir?
First, you can pay with the card, and the second of all, we learn that Midrash, as Rambam said, sometimes exaggerating the events that were described. He even wanted to write a book where the true story is exaggerated stories.
Who?
Rambam. Rabbi Dovid gave a speech about it.
I don't know anything about it.
So he said not all stories in Rambam are not stories.
If you could tell Chazal, one second. Chazal often, dozens of hundreds of times, they'll tell you it's a mashal. A mashal means it's a parable. They'll make up a story together, but they tell you, mashal lema, what is this comparable to? It's comparable to a king who had a son and the son rejected him. And that's hundreds of times. That's not an exaggeration. That they're telling you, I'm making up a story in order to convey an idea. That's not an exaggeration. That's not a falsehood. I'm telling you, if I say to you, for example, I give you an example of something that never happened. That's not a falsehood. That's an example. That's perfectly acceptable. Chazal do it all the time, especially, I notice, when it comes to the relationship between the Jewish people and God. They always use the example of a king and the parable of a king and a prince and that sort of thing. That way we could make a more of an immediate connection with it. God is still something that's a little bit too abstract for us. So that's perfectly acceptable. That's not what you call it. That's not an exaggeration.
No,
that's not.
In Midrash's thing, there are some stories that said not to take.
No, something. Oh boy, you've opened up a Pandora's box. Let's take a break for station identification before we go into this. Hello, I'm here to tell you about the Shidduch questionnaire. You too deserve to be able to check out a bacher accurately. You too deserve answers to your question. The Shidduch questionnaire is now available. Do you want to know, does the bacher get the minyan on time? Does the bacher, is he a sharp dresser? Is he going to treat your daughter like the queen she deserves to be treated? Is this the bacher you want to spend all that money on? Now you too could find out by using the Shidduch questionnaire. The Shidduch questionnaire, 48 questions, penetrating, getting at the truth, getting the answers that you want. The Shidduch questionnaire is available, if anybody wants it, for parents who have kids in Shidduchim. How was that? Was that good? Was that good? I could make a living at that, right? I wasted my talents. How do you like that? The Shidduch questionnaire, if anybody wants, is available. There are 48 questions over here, and this emphasizes and focuses more on what to ask, how to ask it, in order to get some accuracy. And if you're interested, you could order it from me at email Dovid B. Kaplan, B as in baseball, basketball, badminton, busted bridges of Baltimore, and boy are the White Sox bad. Right, so it's available if anybody wants. Okay, back to our regular programming. Okay, so you're asking about the Gemara, something else. So this is extremely important. The Gemara sometimes, for example, the classic example is always used, the Gemara in Baba Basra, Rabba Bar Bar Chana, where he travels the seas, and he describes waves that are talking to each other, and gigantic sea creatures, and a frog that's the size of 60 houses. I mean, things that we have not experienced. That's what I think you're referring to. There, when Chazal bring up stories like this, and it appears in Midrashim, also appears in Shas in various places, there are different opinions among the commentaries. Some of the Mefarshim say that when it's obviously allegorical, so Chazal are trying to communicate something with very deep secrets. They're not trying to deceive us. It's not a Genevas Das. They're trying to communicate an idea. If I tell you today the bear fought the eagle, the bear went to war against the eagle. The bear is Russia, the eagle is America. The bear went to war against the eagle, and I'm talking in allegorical terms.
About 100 years it won't.
That's why Chazal did it in such a way that we have to have a Masorah and understand, and have a Vilna Gaon and an Arizal to explain to us what it's about. They didn't want it accessible to everybody else. There's another opinion that says every Agadata, even these beyond our experience, has a literal level. It doesn't mean it was there for the literal level, because Chazal aren't interested in telling us stories. It does have a literal level, but it's got the allegorical level. There is such an opinion. And even one of the commentaries says, the proof, if you look in the world of the microscopic, what was the first thing they thought was the smallest particle of matter? Was it the atom? Or the atom? And then what did they find? There's a molecule. So, no, the first they thought it was a molecule. Yeah. Then it was a molecule, then they thought it was an atom. And then after an atom, it was sort of like a quark or something? An electron, a quark. Every time and these are all things that you can't see with your blind eye, but we know that there's a worlds in the microscopic. There are worlds in every cell, and we can't see it. So the fact that you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And so if it talks about sea creatures that are massive sea creatures or frogs or whatever it is, just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You haven't been through the entire Amazon forest. So just because we can't see it. So there is a school of thought that says that there is a literal level also. Most say that no, that it's allegorical. But whatever it is, it's not an exaggeration and it's not a lie. Chazal are teaching us and they're educating us. Okay, let's go on. Take a look at Pasuk Yud Daled. This is very encouraging. So where are we? No, Pasuk Yud Gimel, sorry. Lo sashok esreyecha, don't cheat your fellow. Lo sigzol, don't steal. This is Gzela now. Lo solin pe'ula socher itcha ad boker, and do not withhold payment from a worker. So again, losigol, the concept of losigol is very broad about various forms of theft. And I saw the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim was once at a wedding. I think he was at his son or son-in-law's wedding. I don't remember which one. And in the old days at weddings, people used to get up and speak. And there were other speakers that spoke before the Chafetz Chaim. When they asked the Chafetz Chaim to speak, he wouldn't. Chafetz Chaim refused to speak. I think it was one of his relatives' wedding. They asked him why. He said, because there were other people who spoke. If I speak and I speak better than they did, then I'll be stealing the honor that they had gotten. I'll be stealing honor from them, and I don't want to be a Goslin. So Chafetz Chaim said, okay, that's a very high level. It's a very high level. It's not technically, that's not stealing. There's certainly a sensitivity for that. By the way, I want to tell you something, an interesting story. Do you know who Rav Leff is? Rav Zev Leff? Have you heard of Rav Zev Leff? He's one of the biggest American Rabbanim in Eretz, English-speaking Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael. So Rav Leff and I once did a program. There was a Shmiras Haloshen gathering for men here in Israel. So Rav Leff, I was asked to speak, and Rav Leff was speaking. But he's a big Rav. So I called him up, and I said, "Listen, I'm on the program. They honored me by putting me on the program with you. I'm not speaking before you. I'm not going to get up and speak before Rav Leff." So Rav Leff said, "No. Oh no, the organizer said. I said to the organizer, fine, I'll speak after Rav Leff." He said, "No, Rav Leff insists on speaking last. On speaking second." So I was like, "Well, no, this is not going to happen. I'm not speaking for others." So I called Rav Leff up. And I said, I'm not speaking before. He said, no, I'm going to speak second. I said, why? So I was trying to think, why would he want to speak after me? So I figured either because the last speaker is usually what you remember the most, or because if I say something that's inaccurate, he could correct it. That's what I figured. That's what I was thinking. So I said to him, why do you want to speak last? So he said to me, because he said he's a Rav of a community. He's used to speaking. He says, if the guy ahead of me, let's say the guy ahead of me speaks and says what I'm going to say. If I speak first and say what he's going to say, then this guy's in real trouble now. Where's he go? What's he going to pull out? But if he says what I'm going to say, big deal, so I'll pass, say something else. He told me he was used to, because he had a kahila. That's how sensitive he was. It's interesting. I learned more from that than I did from the whole Shemiras Haloshen thing. So the Chafetz Chaim was worried about stealing somebody else's kavod. By the way, I saw just recently Rav Moshe Sternbach Shlita, who's one of the biggest posek, if not the biggest posek in Klal Yisrael today. So he's asked the following question: there's a community. There's a Talmid Chacham in the community, a moderate Talmid Chacham, but he demands more respect from the community than he really deserves at his level. And he's demanding. People can get, especially the older people get, the older you get, the more sensitive you get to honor. So he's demanding more honor. What is their attitude? What should their reaction be to that? Should you tell the guy, listen, you're good, but you ain't that good. You're not holding by that. That's one most people's instinctive response. What should they do? You know what he said? He said there's a halacha in tzedakah that you're supposed to help a person according to his station, his situation. For example, the Gemara says, Hillel once ran in front of the chariot of there was a wealthy man who lost his money, and Hillel then ran in front of his chariot in order to give the guy the stature and the honor that he once had as a wealthy man. A wealthy man loses his money, it's not just the money. He's lost his entire status. So it says you have to help a poor man according to who he is. If there's a guy who's lost money and the guy who's used to eating steak 3 times a week, you have to try to provide him with steak 3 times a week. A guy who's a poor guy who's happy to have a steak once a year, you don't have to give him steak three times a year. So he said, this is no less of a form of tzedakah by giving him something that he needs. He needs this honor, so give him the honor. What does it cost you? So you give the honor. Unless a guy crosses a line and he makes demands on the community for certain positions. But if the guy feels he wants people to honor him and respect him, he wants to sit in front of the shul. So let him sit in front of the shul. You're giving him something that he feels deprived from. You understand that? That's what Ramesh is with it. Because it's a form of tzedakah, no different than anything else. You're giving him something that he feels he's lacking. He doesn't deserve it. He's not at that level. And he's not at that stature. But you should still give it to him because he feels he deserves it. I got to show you something that's very encouraging now. Take a look at Pasuk Yud Daled. Lo sekal al cheresh. Don't curse a deaf person. Why does it say a deaf person? Don't curse a deaf person.
Can't hear the curse.
And therefore, even a deaf person. Even somebody who could, like some great philosophical question, if you curse in the woods, does anybody hear it? You know, don't curse a deaf person, and certainly not a live person, number one. Number two, v'liftei iver lo sitein michshol. Do not put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. V'yaresa me'elokecha, fear your God, ani Hashem. You gotta be a really low person to go stick out your foot and trip a blind man. I mean, even the lowest of the low wouldn't do something like that. It's a blind man walking, you're going to stick out a stick and you're going to trip a blind man. So why does the Torah say, don't, in front of a blind person, don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person?
Don't deceive.
Oh, close. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is the right column, 9 lines from the top. V'liftei iver lo sitein michshol. Michshol says Rashi. You see that right column, 9 lines from the top? No, Lifnei Iver. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, says Rashi. Lifnei Hasuma Bedover. In front of someone who is blind to a certain matter, Lo sitein eitza she'ena hogenes lo. Don't give him advice which is not good for him. Al Tomar, don't say, for example, Rashi says, Mikor sadcha, sell your field, v'kach lecha chamor, and buy a donkey. Ve'ata okef olav v'not le'emen, and then you go around him and you get it. In other words, you want his field. So what do? You advise, I think you ought to sell your field. You got to sell your field. They got a good buy on donkeys now. If you need some cash, sell your field and go get the donkey. Why did you advise him that? Because you want to get the field, so now you go and buy the field for the guy who bought it from him, because you're trying to get at that field. So the Torah says to give bad advice is liftei iver lo sitein michshol. Then look. Let's continue. V'yoresa me'elokecha, you should fear your God. Why does the Torah say, and you should fear your God? Lefi she'adover hazeh eino mosr lebrios leida. Because people don't know, im daito shalzel l'tovara. People don't know if you had good or bad intentions with that advice. V'yochol lihishamet, you could make an excuse. V'lomar l'tova niskavanti. You could always justify yourself by saying, well, I intended for the good. It was not my fault it didn't work out well. Lefichach nemar bo yeresa me'elokecha. Therefore it says you should fear your God. Hamakir machshev vosecha. God knows what you're thinking. You may be able to deceive people. You can't deceive God. V'chein kol davar hamasr lilibo shel adam oseo, and it applies to anything that is in a person's heart. Ve'ein shar abrios makiros, well, people don't know it. Shenemar bo v'yaresa me'elokecha. So the Torah says you didn't even do something wrong. You're just planning and plotting how to get this other guy's stuff, and you're already doing something wrong. You're already going to get Zappo for it. So Rabbi Feinstein says, if that's how it is when it comes to Averas, if you plan how to do a mitzvah, let's say you help plan how to build a shul for the community, or you plan how to build a day school, or you plan how to make a sheva brachas for somebody, or you plan how you're going to manage your money to give tzedakah, just for the planning alone. If for an Avera there are consequences, so we know that midah tova meruba midah zapuranos. We know that God pays at a higher rate for good things. Anything the Torah says is not good, like looking at inappropriate things. So then if a person controls his eyes and doesn't look at inappropriate things, you get unimaginable reward. And the same thing when it comes over here. You plan to do something wrong and you get punished for it, you're accountable for it. Same thing happens when it comes, if you're planning something good, so you certainly get rewarded for it. That's very encouraging. Okay? Take a look at Posuk Tezvav. A beautiful, beautiful insight here. Beautiful insight. It's so sharp. 3 lines from the top. Lo sasu ovel b'mishpat. Now, how does he translate the answer? Do not commit a perversion of justice. That's a very good translation. Lo sisa pnei dal. Don't benefit a poor man. Don't favor a poor man. You know, if you're a judge, you might favor the poor man in court unjustifiably. Velo sedar pnei gadol. On the other hand, you might respect a prominent individual. So sometimes a judge may think, listen, he's a poor guy. I'm going to rule against the rich guy so that the poor guy wins the money. They can't do that. And sometimes you feel, I'm going to rule against the poor guy because he's a prominent individual. I'll have the poor guy, reimburse. I'll have the rich guy reimburse him, but in court I can't embarrass this prominent individual. Torah says both are no good. Judge, 1 second, just judge it correctly. I get to 1 second. So judge it correctly. B'tzedek tishpat ha'misecha. You have to judge righteously. You have to judge correctly. So the Gemara said that David HaMelech, what would he do? He would rule, whatever the rule, when David HaMelech was judging a case, and if he had a rule against the poor man, he would rule against the poor man. But then he himself would reimburse the poor man afterwards, so the poor man doesn't lose out. So, but anything that you want to do, which is not going to be strict justice, you're not allowed to do as a judge. That's the plain idea here. What we're going to ask you.
There are two. I heard, for example, if a guy checking, like, for example, chicken for kashrus, and it's like b'di'emet. If it's like a poor family, he can issue that it's kosher. If it's rich family,
that's a different. That's when it comes to a posek.
Yeah.
A posek, the ideal situation of a posek is that he should know the person, have some sort of personal connection with the person. A rav of a community who paskins for his community, he knows the people of the community. He knows this is a from yeshiva guy. And for a from yeshiva guy, you shouldn't be eating this sort of shaila. B'di'evet, it's okay, but you're not at that level. You're already at a higher level. For you, you shouldn't be eating it. And for somebody else who's struggling with Yiddishkeit or is a new Baal Tshuva or is a poor man, sir, him, for you, it's okay. There's a story about a guy comes into a Rav, before Sukkot, people go to Rabbanim to show them their esrogs. So this guy comes to the Rav, a Kolol guy, comes to the Rav to show him an esrog. So the Rav looks at the esrog. I says, this esrog's not for you. So the guy looks at him and goes, why, what's wrong with it? He says, nothing's wrong with it. So I said, why not for me? He says, because this is a gorgeous esrog. And I know that an esrog like this must cost a pile. But you're a guy learning in Kolol. It's Erev Sukkot. Instead of buying a first-rate esrog, which is cost you all that money, buy a lower-level esrog and use the extra money to buy your wife a new dress for Yontif, because that's also a mitzvah. This is not for you. In your financial category, that's a posek isn't just somebody who shoots off answers left, right, and center. Posek has to know his customers. Sometimes you don't, so you do a little research and find out. You ask a guy, well, where are you from? What you get, or you have a sense of who the guy is. That's a different question. Here we're talking about in court, where two guys are fighting in court. We're not talking about one individual asking a shaila. Two guys are fighting in court. This guy's poor, this guy's rich. Torah says, call it the way it is. Don't start making calculations. 1 second, Israel. Don't start making calculations. 1 second. I want to show you something here. So I saw like this. Number 1, Lo sasu ovel b'mishpat. A completely different context. Don't do something corrupt b'mishpat and justify it. That's talking to every one of us. In other words, you always got to wonder, the Torah, are you a halachic judge? Am I a halachic judge? None of us are judges. Who's this talking to? It's talking to every single one of us. The Torah is saying, sometimes, people do averas, and they justify it. They have what do you call rationalization. They won't mind if I get on the train without paying once in a while. And not only that, it's a mitzvah, because it's an Arab company. And you have all sorts of justification. The Torah says, Lo sasu avel, don't be corrupt, b'mishpat, and then go ahead and try to justify it. Completely different context. Number 1. Number 2, lo sasu avel b'mishpat. Mishpat implies an individual who was a victim of Hashem's midas hadin. A person, something unfortunate happened to a person. Midas Hadin struck a person. Midas Hadin, God's strict justice. The person suffered a financial loss, or maybe a personal loss, or somebody in the family. Something happened. That's called Midas Hadin, right? Midas Hadin. Lo sasu ovel b'mishpat. Don't think that there was a perversion of justice when God struck this person with Midas Hadin, if it's the individual himself. Lo sasu ovel b'mishpat. That means if a person is been on the receiving end of Midas Hadin, you have to justify it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what he's doing. That's very, very difficult for you because people, when something bad happens, people say, why me? Why me? There's a why me. Why me implies that HaKadosh Baruch Hu messed up over here. I told you about that woman who with the scratch-offs yesterday won $1 billion through it. I guarantee you she didn't scratch off and say, why me? Everybody else says, why not me? There, everybody's like, why not me? Why her? Why not me? I got stuff to do with that money. No. Don't go think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know what he's doing. And there's Midas Hadin. Yes, Azriel, what were we going to ask?
I was going to tell you, there was actually, like what you say, in secular law, when two guys are arguing with each other, most likely that insurance they have will pay for them. But lawyers are not allowed to mention it, so the judge or witnesses won't be biased in terms of, let the insurance pay anyway.
That's the judge's straight. Very good. Yeah. Well, that's when lawyers are in their best behavior, which is rare. But the what do you call it? That's in court. You're not allowed to. I heard about a lawyer, by the way. He was a young lawyer who was trying to break in, and he was making his. There was a company. There was a farmer who this company killed 24 of his pigs. So he took this company to court. So his lawyer got up and he said to the jury, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, 24 pigs. They killed 24 pigs. That's twice the amount that there are in the jury box. Very good, yeah.
He didn't win the case.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't say whether he won the case or not. It's a documented story. It doesn't say whether or not he won the case. But the what do you call it? Then there's another guy. There's another guy who's called up as a witness. So the judge says to him, "What's your name?" He says, "Ralph Jones." You married? Yes, about 5 years. Have you formed an opinion? Not for 5 years, sir. Then there's another guy. This lady is testifying, and her husband's on trial for stealing. We're talking about robbery. So the prosecuting attorney says, well, ma'am, when you married him, did you know he was a robber and he had tendencies towards robbing? She goes, yeah. Well, then why did you marry him? She goes, listen, I was getting older, and it was a choice between him and a lawyer, so I chose him. And don't get me started. Don't get me started. How can you tell where a car hit a lawyer and where a car hit a rattlesnake? There are skid marks by the rattlesnake. Okay, one more point. B'tzedek tishpat amisecha. B'tzedek tishpat amisecha. By the way, if anybody's interested, we have the, I don't know if you can see this on the camera. It says the Parsha Review, Kedoshim. This is a review of the Parsha of what we've spoken about during this week. Some of the things we have spoken about, some things we haven't spoken about, and it's ideal for the Shabbos table for those of you who want to have something of content to speak about. And this is also available at Dovid B. Kaplan. The, what do you call it? The B'tzedek tishpat amisecha is you have to you have to judge accurately, but it's also this is the command that you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. The dan lekavskos, they have to judge people favorably, and this is one of the more difficult, tricky. It's a tricky area because sometimes there are three categories. The halacha says there are three categories. There's a tzaddik, and if you see a tzaddik doing something questionable, let's say you see a tzaddik eating a cheeseburger, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. You have to assume either he doesn't know it's a cheeseburger, not to say it's not a cheeseburger. You know for a fact it's a cheeseburger, a treif cheeseburger. You have to assume either he doesn't know it was a cheeseburger, he thought the M at McDonald's, the big M, he thought it stood for Mahadrin. He has an ulcer and it's life-threatening and he needs to eat it. You have to give him the benefit of the doubt when you see him doing something wrong. If he's a Russia, a confirmed Russia, so even if he's doing something right, you have to assume he's got ulterior motivation. If you see him giving tzedakah, so you say, well, it's a photo op, and he's just trying to get somebody to go. He's certainly not doing it for proper. When you have your average happy-go-lucky Jew, there's an average Jew, then you could call it the way you see it. If he's eating a cheeseburger, so you could assume, well, he probably had a moment of weakness. He succumbed to temptation. But it is, It is admirable, and it is recommended to try to give him the benefit of the doubt anyway. Now, the question here becomes, I see a guy doing something wrong. How can I possibly give him the benefit of the doubt? Where's the benefit of the doubt? I see a guy from shul, an average guy, not a tzaddik, and he's eating a cheeseburger in a McDonald's. Where's there room for the benefit of the doubt? The answer is, I think the Chafetz Chaim says, if you lose something, where do you look? You lost your wallet. Where do you look? You look in every single place you can think of, even the most illogical places. You go look up in the attic, even though you haven't been in the attic in 20 years. And you go look everywhere. He says, when you want to find the benefit of a doubt, give a person the benefit of the doubt, the same way that when it comes to your money, you look in illogical places, giving the benefit of the doubt, also look in illogical places. That's what the Chafetz Chaim says. That if you're really interested in fulfilling it, and it is certainly recommended to try even an average Jew to give him the benefit of the doubt, then a person should look even in illogical places. We have it says, don't judge your fellow man. Pirkei says, don't judge your fellow man until you get to his place. You say, well, if I would never do something like that. That's what you say now because you're not in that situation. Number one. But even more than that, you can never be him. Him with his personality and his life circumstances and his tendencies and his temperament, you can't be him. So don't judge him until you get to his place because you can never get to his place. That's how Rabbi Forshim explained in Pirkei Avos. Somebody said, when you ever lose something, you come home and you lost something expensive. Well, where did you lose it? Your parents say to you, where did you lose it? And obviously the answer is, if I knew where I lost it, it wouldn't be lost. Don't get smart. Where's that's how it always, okay. So, what happens with somebody defined a wife is this illogical creature who asks you, where's the last place you had it? And you say, it was in my yesterday's pants pocket. And then she goes over there and finds it. And you know how many times it's happened to me where I'm looking for something, I can't find it. My wife said, did you check in the kids' room under the bed? I said, yeah, I looked there 3 times already. She goes in and there it is. I'm almost convinced it wasn't even there for 30 seconds earlier. Somehow it kind of, just so she could go, All right. What did we talk about today? What are we calling this? Theft and deception. Good. I was about to say that.